to terror on the mountain.
The skis patrol started coming down, telling us we were all getting evacuated by rope.
We were working towards getting the lift back open.
One man airlifted to the hospital, while many others left hanging high above the slopes after a chairlift incident in Red Lodge. Plus, horsing around.
Only here in Wyoming will you see a horse on an elevator in a nursing home.
Patients at a Wyoming long-term facility are paid a visit by some special guests. We'll show you. The MTN 430 News starts right now. Well, good afternoon, and thanks for joining us on this Tuesday. I'm Russ Riesinger. The latest on a ski trip to Red Lodge Mountain that took a terrifying turn. A man was airlifted to the hospital in Billings after the ski area says an erratic wind gust threw the man out of his chair on the triple chair lift yesterday. Red Lodge Mountain is only saying the man was, quote, unseated, but won't say if he fell to the ground below or how far he may have fallen. Dozens of skiers and snowboarders had to be evacuated from the lift following that incident. We don't know the man's name or condition, but know he was taken by ambulance to the hospital in Red Lodge because the wind gusts on the mountain were too strong for a helicopter to land. He was then airlifted to St. Vincent Regional Hospital. For those who were enjoying the day on the mountain, it was a scary end to what should have been a fun day.
Oh man, it was terrifying because at first I was like, oh, something happened. They paused it. This happens all the time. And then after like 20 minutes, I was like, okay, something's wrong. And then once I heard like somebody fell off, or then I'd heard the chair had possibly derailed, then I'm thinking, okay, what about the rest of the ride? Like lift, what if our chair is unsafe? So definitely heightened my concern.
Red Lodge Mountain says on Facebook that they place a top priority on the safety of all of their lifts and operations and perform daily, weekly, monthly, and annual safety measures. The triple chair remained closed this morning, and they say it will only reopen when they can ensure safe operation of the lift. Despite that closure, the mountain remained open today with discounted lift prices.
That's a great example of how the weather can affect our lives in so many ways, and severe storms always get our attention. So we'd like to invite you to join us in the National Weather Service as we once again team up for our free Storm Spotter evening. We'll have some training for you starting at 6:30 a week from today in the community room of the Billings Public Library. Always have a great mix of first-timers and people who come back for refreshers. So we'd love to see you there. That's going to be a week from tonight, the Storm Spotter training.
A lot of concerns still exist around DOGE cuts on government agencies. Those layoffs are impacting Montana, with the U.S. Geological Survey office in Bozeman now set to close, and a former Fish and Wildlife Service employee is speaking out about the cuts. MTN's Cassidy Powers hears his concerns about the impact it'll have.
By now, you may have heard DOGE is set to shut down multiple Montana government offices. One of them being Bozeman's U.S. Geological Survey's Northern Rocky Mountain Science Center, and it's located in that building you see right there behind me. But something that hasn't been talked about a lot yet is what the outcome of these closures could look like.
These people aren't sitting around playing cards all day. They're doing things for us, for the people who live in Montana.
Since the news came to light last week, many people have expressed concerns regarding DOGE shutting down at least 12 Montana government facilities. For Chris Servine, a retired Fish and Wildlife Service employee of 35 years, he is especially concerned with the future of U.S. Geological Survey's Northern Rocky Mountain Science Center, or NOROC.
I have a lot of worry about what does that mean for all those scientists there. If you shut down their offices, what happens to the people?
Although Chris never worked directly with NOROC, he was the grizzly bear recovery coordinator for Fish and Wildlife Services. He understands how important the research done at their facility is.
Those scientists contribute a tremendous amount to the management and conservation of wildlife and natural systems in not only in Montana, but in multiple areas of the Northern Rockies.
Some work done at NOROC includes research on invasive species such as zebra mussels and brucellosis, researching climate change, monitoring the status and health of the grizzly bear population in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, and more, which is why one of Chris's biggest concerns...
The people that are making these cuts have no idea about all these issues that we face in Montana, but our congressional delegation supposedly does. So why aren't they speaking up and say, hey, wait a minute, this can't happen?
Last week, a spokesperson with Congressman Ryan Zinke sent me a statement regarding Doge cuts. Part of that statement read, paying for empty buildings is not in the best interest of Montana taxpayers. Similar statements were made by Senator Steve Daines at a recent press conference. Chris's response to that?
Well, the USGS office in Bozeman is on the campus there of MSU, and it's not empty. It's full.
I reached out to both Bozeman offices that are on Doge's chopping block, No Rock, as well as the Bozeman Fish Health Center. I have yet to hear back from either agency. So there are still a lot of unanswered questions about who is in these buildings and what their future holds. But Chris says if you aren't at least a little bit concerned like him...
Well, if you don't care, then you don't care about healthy wildlife in Montana. You don't care about healthy streams and healthy fisheries. I would ask people that if they don't care about any of those things, then why do they live in Montana?
Chris tells me if you do care...
What the public needs to do is contact their congressional delegation and say, where are you guys? Why don't you speak up and help us out?
In Bozeman, Cassidy Powers, MTN News.
A new round of recession fears has begun. The market had a huge sell-off yesterday and then again today following tariffs, Doge actions, and more. Over the weekend, President Trump even refused to rule out a recession. Joe St. George explains why the words from the White House matter and how it could impact all our wallets.
In Washington, there is a concern this week about a possible government shutdown. On Wall Street, there's worry over tariffs. And on Main Street, frustration still over the record high price of eggs. Combine that all with a president who isn't ruling out a recession, and there is no doubt uncertainty about where the American economy is going. JP Morgan Chase analysts have revised their recession forecasts in recent days. In the beginning of the year, analysts said there was a 30% chance of a recession. Now it's 40%, with analysts putting blame on extreme U.S. policies. Larry Summers, the former Treasury Secretary under former President Obama, said President Trump's tariffs are largely to blame.
All of this emphasis on tariffs and all of the ambiguity and uncertainty created about tariffs has ironically both chilled demand, made it businesses not invest.
At the White House, senior advisors have called the current market slide a blip and a, quote, period of transition, believing that ultimately downsizing the federal government and instituting tariffs will be a good thing. There's also confidence among many conservatives in Washington that once Congress passes President Trump's legislative agenda, including a tax bill later this year, the U.S. economy will receive a boost. The recession risk is not just being felt on Wall Street and in Washington. Scripps News Group Detroit talked with everyday Americans at the local grocery store, where the concerns are real.
I'm a retiree, so I have to watch all my funds wherever they are, and this back and forth gets a little scary.
Hopefully this doesn't end up ultimately in a recession, so just a little volatility in the market is what I'm hoping for.
While the chance of a recession has ticked up a bit in recent days, financial experts say the best thing you can do right now is don't panic. Markets have a way of going one direction one week and the complete opposite direction the following week. Joe St. George, Scripps News Group, Washington.
It's been a breakthrough in the high-stakes talks between U.S. and Ukrainian officials in Saudi Arabia. Those talks, which come after last month's disastrous Oval Office meeting between Ukrainian President Zelensky and President Donald Trump, is aimed at charting a path toward ending the war with Russia. In today's deal, Ukraine has agreed to a U.S. proposal to implement a 30-day interim ceasefire. That agreement now requires approval from Russia. The United States has also agreed to immediately lift the pause on intelligence sharing and the delivery of military aid to Ukraine. Just hours before talks began in Saudi Arabia, Ukraine launched what appears to be its largest drone attack on Russia since Putin's invasion. Russian officials say they shot down hundreds of drones, but at least 3 people were killed and more than a dozen were hurt. President Zelensky has stressed that Ukraine wants peace. And we're learning new details about what might have caused this country's deadliest air disaster in 2 decades. The National Transportation Safety Board shared its preliminary report about that collision between an Army helicopter and an American Airlines plane in Washington, D.C. Scripps News investigative correspondent Patrick Terpstra has the latest developments.
The National Transportation Safety Board, investigating that crash between an Army helicopter and passenger plane, just issued some urgent safety recommendations. The National Transportation Safety Board releasing its preliminary report as investigators work to understand why an Army Black Hawk helicopter collided with an American Airlines plane landing at Ronald Reagan National Airport in January. The report, for the first time, sharing photos of the gashes in the passenger plane left by the helicopter. One image showing a piece of the helicopter's rotor embedded in the jet. The NTSB has found helicopters and airplanes often came too close to each other around the airport, triggering automated warning alarms about once a month.
We remain concerned about the significant potential for a future mid-air collision at DCA, which is why we are recommending a permanent solution today.
The NTSB issuing urgent action, calling on the FAA to make new temporary helicopter restrictions permanent during times the airport's smaller runway near an established helicopter route is in use. The NTSB also recommending the FAA establish another route for helicopters that pass through some of the most restricted airspace around the nation's capital.
What we are saying is that there is a safety risk here and they need to take immediate action.
And earlier, the NTSB said that it appears the crew of that helicopter did not hear a critical radio transmission from air traffic control to go behind that passenger plane. Patrick Terpstra, Scripps News Group, Washington.
One Wyoming nonprofit is on a life-changing mission, bring the Wild West indoors to long-term care. MTN's Marcus Kakova takes us to Cody, where hooves echo through hospital hallways, bringing comfort, connection, and a touch of Cowboy State magic.
Wyoming's sun sets gold. Air sweet, the water, wine. The W's in our Wild West, here, outdoors is life. But what happens when the state's cowfolk become sage, when they're too frail to be outside?
Norman, I can't believe you, man.
He can't get enough of you today, Faye.
Once a month, Wyo Hoofbeats saddles up to the long-term care center at Cody Regional Health.
Only here in Wyoming will you see a horse on an elevator in a nursing home.
We're just putting on Norman's Nikes.
2 horses, 1 cat, the occasional chicken, and a dog in a tutu. The ranch is fitted to spend time at the hospital.
It's as good for us as it is for the staff as it is for the residents. A lot of people say it's magic.
Jody Goldbach and Heather Bales are co-founders of the nonprofit, who say they do it for people like Lynn Chadwick, who's headed home after missing her golden retriever for 2 months.
We will have to have special things to keep me standing because she'll come. Boom!
Lynn, a veterinarian of 52 years, also brought animals to visit the hospital in the late 90s, making this something of a Wyoming tradition.
It's not fun to be up here
Without all your animals.
Yeah, her animals are her life.
Although sometimes saying goodbye doesn't mean going home, making this more than a physical challenge.
The hardest part for us is we come 1 month and see some of our people, and the next month they're gone.
For one more moment, they bask in open air, soaking memories of sun, the simple joy of what Wyoming has to offer.
It transports them out of here. It just for that 2 minutes or whatever, it at least helps them remember something else besides sitting in here.
Marcus Kakova, MTN News.